Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to see you all here. For CDP, I stand for integrity, values, families, children, community, and all those good things that we hold dear to us. I'm here to express that today, particularly because we're talking very much about community. My whole life has been community. Being from a nurse, and nursed most of my life, and then being involved in so many community areas, hence the last one being, I guess, Camellia Cottage, that I'm still involved with, which is a great little area and helps you to understand community a lot. My experiences prior to that, I've been involved in a radio station development here in Grafton, and I've done NGO type work overseas, taking teams overseas. So my focus is very much for community, and I like to see people working together. I think all of us have got a great deal to give to one another and to the community as a whole. I'm very much for young people. I just love young people. So a lot of my focus over the years has been training and helping young people. And I have had the pleasure of watching them grow up, and that's been a delight to see. Some of them move on into great leadership areas, and others just happy with life and just doing what they're happy with. But we just want to see our communities happy and everybody achieve the best that they can possibly do with their own gift that they have. And that, I think, is so important, because everybody's individual. And I know we're going to glean a lot here tonight from you all, because you think you're here to listen to us. We're here to listen to you too. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and I'd like to pay my respects to the Gumbaynggirr, Bundjalung and Yagal elders, past, future and present. Thank you everyone for coming tonight, and I'd just like to say how amazing I think this document, the social plan that you guys have sent me, I didn't even realise that existed. And I looked at that over the past week and I'm so impressed, so thank you very much, because it is aligned with a lot of my values. I have lived here in the Clarence electorate for 30 years, and I just want to tell everybody the Clarence electorate actually goes from Dundarabin up to Casino, and Tweed, Lismore and Ballina fit into the Clarence electorate, so we have a lot of ground to cover. One of the things that, one of the many things I bring as a candidate to you today and for the electorate is my wealth of knowledge and experience within this community. I move through every sector of this community with grace, passion and integrity. I am loved by a lot of different interest groups. I know that, and I carry that and honour that by always being myself with them. I'm asked by a lot of these interest groups to come and help and do advocacy on their behalf. I really am passionate about our community, and I'm just as passionate about the future of our young people. What I would like to see is the main political parties spend 4 years in the wilderness to get their act together, because I want to be the gatekeeper and the guardian for the next generation, because they have our future in their hands and we hold their future now and this time in our hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thanks very much. I'd like to thank the Northern Rivers Social Development Council for the opportunity to come and speak today in Grafton. It was pleasing to see an organisation that wanted to run a forum like this in the main centre of the electorate. There was a time early on when we thought we might not get that. I'm glad it's happened, and it's great to be in Grafton today to speak to the people of Grafton about this very important election. Every now and then, towns and regions get to a critical crossroads and a critical point in their own development. I think if you look at what's happened, particularly in Grafton over the last term of the state government, it would be fair to say that there's plenty of material to discuss and plenty of issues to discuss for the upcoming election. I think the choice that we're all faced with on March the 28th and before for those who are pre-polling, is that we need to now determine at what level the state government chooses to engage with the Clarence electorate. Because I think if you're fair, the way in which our local member has engaged with his electorate over the last term of government has been pretty poor. And I think tonight, the amount of empty seats at that table is a fair indication of not only his dedication to his role, but dedication to you people, that very first and primary dedication. I think that's pretty disappointing. And I wanted to say that straight up, because it's you know, I think all four of us at various times may have made representations to Chris that we wanted him to turn up. I know I certainly did on a number of occasions, and it's disappointing that he didn't turn up. The Labor Party was dealt a fairly severe but very direct message at the last election, that our behaviour and the way in which we had governed this state didn't align with the values of the community. And I think the result we were dealt was fair enough. We were obliterated. The electorate across New South Wales spoke loudly and clearly about how they felt about our performance. We spent some time reflecting on our own processes, reflecting on our own values, what does it mean to have integrity in what you do, and we've returned to the electorate at this election with a suite of policies which we feel align with community values, and most importantly are the policies which we believe can take parts of regional New South Wales like Clarence forward. We're going to stand strong against the coal seam gas movement because we believe it's not correct for this region. We're going to protect the sale and the privatisation of New South Wales' electricity network, the poles and wires, which belongs in public hands. And we're going to continue the sound investment in health and education services because we know that that's what regional communities need. And that also goes for the health and community support services that this organisation is very soundly provided in regional areas. It's great to be here tonight, and I look forward to your questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and elders past and present, and I'd like to thank Gary for a wonderful welcome to country. I've never had one in Gumbaynggirr before. Well done. My name is Janet Cavanaugh and I'm the Greens candidate for Clarence. I would like you to vote for me before the other candidates. I would also like you to vote for the Greens on the Legislative Council ticket because I believe the presence of the Greens in both houses of Parliament is necessary to negotiate improvements in government legislation, whoever wins, to achieve the best outcomes for this state. I've lived in the Clarence for 25 years and my roots go back to this valley 5 generations. The Green slogan in this year's election is clean energy, clean politics for a different New South Wales. And I take that to mean a fairer New South Wales. Clean energy has special meaning in the Clarence. It's the region in which the community at Glenorchy and at Bentley stood up for the right to live in a landscape that's free of gas fields. The Greens' vision for New South Wales is one powered by clean energy. Energy from fossil fuels is driving environmental destruction. We have a comprehensive plan to transition New South Wales to 100% renewables. And guess what? That creates jobs in regional areas just like the Clarence. Clean politics is linked to clean energy. I feel that it's no coincidence that the Minister for Resources in the Liberal National Government and the corresponding Minister in the former Labor Government have both faced ICAC. Large mining companies make donations to the major political parties to buy favour. It's in their interest to prevent the transition to renewable energy. The Greens have a long track record on cleaning up New South Wales politics. We will continue our push to drive corporate money out of politics, giving voters and communities a real voice in Parliament. But we need your vote to help us make New South Wales a state for zero tolerance of corruption. We need to end those backroom deals and influence peddling that has put people, the community and the environment last. I'm standing for Clarence this year, 3rd time lucky I hope, because this is a critical campaign. Critical because so many of the services we need, health, education, women's refuges and electricity are facing more cuts and privatisations that will make our lives harder. The Greens will challenge the old parties, break up their absolute control and champion the public interest. As I said, I was the Greens candidate in 2011 in both the state election and in the by-election, and I hope it's third time lucky. But this year the issues are very, very similar. But one party, the Greens, is consistent on these issues because our policy platform is based on a firm set of core principles: social and economic justice, ecological sustainability, grassroots democracy, and peace and non-violence. Napoleon said that the great difficulty with politics is that there are no established principles. Well, the Greens are the party that has brought principles into politics. So I urge you to vote for the party that can and wants to make a difference. I don't need a minute to say, yes, it's Greens policy. We need a ban on unconventional gas, not just CSG, but also tight sands and shale gas exploitation in New South Wales, and it is certainly within our power to do that. Thank you.
And it is ours too. We do not want it in New South Wales.
We haven't supported any legislation to date.
Doesn't matter. It is what's happening. It's what's happening. It's what's happening with CDP, and it really is. And I am so against coal seam mining.
Can we please give I think if we could please just hear what the candidates have to say.
I have researched it for a number of years too, and it's not like I'm talking off the top of my head. I have been looking and looking like a lot of you, and watching and watching and watching, and researching them. I'm not happy. Okay, I might be CDP, but we're not happy either. And when you know the facts, you can have a great change of heart, can't you? Absolutely. And I stand on the fact that we've got to protect this wonderful land.
Remember a little while ago when I said local people have to stand up and be accountable and be a hero? 2.5 years ago, I had never been to a protest march in my life or a rally. I just don't do things like that. And I was going down to Sydney to visit my mother, and I heard about this CSG rally at Martin Place that was being organised by the New South Wales farmers alongside the New South Wales CWA. So I thought I'll get myself along to that just to have a good feel for it. I tell you what, it was gobsmacking to see people this age crying and devastated. Farmers, men, women, nans and pops. I couldn't help but cry either. And then to come back and see the our MP once again and our community once again being walked over by the jail issue. From that moment onwards, I looked at that and went, no. Looking at what the farmers did, what the New South Wales Country Women's Association did, looking what I'm doing now, this is me standing up for our community because you have given a mandate that there's no CSG, and that I will not compromise on.
The Labor Party supports the coal seam gas-free Northern Rivers in the 7 local government areas up here. We've already stated that, which includes the Clarence Valley. I'll be pushing within the party to ensure that we can extend that policy for the rest of the state. That's my commitment. It's a commitment from various other MPs within the group. And the coal seam gas and unconventional gas movement is something that's spoken about quite broadly within the party. It's a conversation we'll continue to have. And it's my commitment to you and the rest of the group and the rest of the electorate that I'll be pushing to make sure that we can extend that policy to the rest of the state. it presents a unique problem, I'll admit that. A lot of money put down. I can see the concern you've got there with how a government would deal with that. But let me assure yourself and then the rest of the group, Labor's commitment is an ironclad commitment. I won't be moving from it. The party won't be moving from it. And we are committed to ensuring that the region stays coal seam gas and unconventional gas free. Now, if we've got to engage with the owners of 446 and AJ Lucas, we're prepared to do whatever it takes to ensure that that company, whomever it is, and whatever other PELs are in those 7 local government areas, are coal seam gas free. We need to do what we can, whatever we can, and whatever measures we need to take to ensure that that happens. It's a simple commitment. It'll be difficult to do, but that's my commitment and that's the party's commitment to the Clarence Valley.
That's a great question, Lynette. Okay, so already, like you, I have had an association with the coal seam gas movement. I have a Facebook group called Women Against Coal Seam Gas, which what I do for that site is I put information on there for others to actually pick up on what's going on around New South Wales, what's going on overseas. So people are informed, communities are educated and informed. Recently, when the Frackman movie was broadcast here in Grafton, I got a really great buzz from being able to go home, switch over my superannuation and my power supply to a company that was all about renewables and proper investment. That is the only way that these companies, like Lucas, understand that we mean business. We move our shares or we move our superannuation from companies like that. Now, Frackman, the movie, they encouraged 75,000 people to move across their shares. So if they can do that, we can do it as well. So we can just keep the resistance up there by doing, little examples of that.
Solidarity.
Exactly.
Again, any way that helps, and I think that's good. And thanks, Lynette. That's a doozy of a question because we know that we could face big problems in New South Wales with that. However, I believe the fact is they cannot say that it is safe. They cannot. And I think that's the one thing we've got on our side, is the fact that it isn't. And that can be pushed, and I believe we can use that to our best advantage. And especially with, we want to see an inquiry done on it as well and really get that out there and really put it out there and say, that's the facts. You can't.
Hi, Lynette. I am also disappointed that Chris Galactus is not present because I'd love to hear his answer. Like Lynette, I've been working on the anti-CSG movement since 2011. It was actually a major platform of mine in the by-election. I thoroughly researched the issue then, and I delivered education information sessions across the Clarence Valley in 2012 and 2013, trying to spread the message. It isn't safe, as Carol pointed out. We've got the Office of Coal Seam Gas visited Grafton recently. Jock Lurry guaranteeing, yes, wells never breach, never fail. Yeah, and we know that he's lying because we've got experts from America who've been involved in the industry for decades saying 6.5% of the wells breach at the start. Within 20 years, 60% of them fail, and and they all fail in the long term. So what will we do with PEL 445? Well, I understand that the government actually needs to approve the purchase. It's just not a fait accompli with AJ Lucas putting their money on the table. But even if it's too late to stop the sale, AJ Lucas is buying that lease, that licence, in the knowledge that the community is opposed to it. We've got 90% of the community We've got a whole series of gas-fueled free communities being declared in the Northern Rivers, a lot of them in PEL 445's area. They're purchasing that with their eyes open. Caveat emptor. We don't need to compensate them if we then say we're going to cancel the licence because there is no community social licence for the industry. Thank you. Okay, I've put out a press release on the day that the cancellation of PEL 478 was announced, expressing my surprise that $200 and something thousand had been paid to Clarence Morton Resources since they hadn't actually done anything on the ground in that PEL, and that was a fundamental breach of their licence conditions. And so why, for something that had expired in 2012, were we even paying anything for them? It should have just been cancelled. It should have been cancelled under Section 22 of the Petroleum Onshore Act, and no compensation is payable under that Act. In terms of accepting donations, the Greens don't accept donations from any corporation in New South Wales, and we want to add mining companies to the list of prohibited donors. Thanks.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? Yeah.
No, not really.
Oh, well, no. Okay, where there's money involved. Still, it's very sad. I can't add a lot to that, and I think Janet said a lot about it. But, yeah, I'm just pretty upset about that. And, yeah, I would fight anything that... People shouldn't be given money that don't deserve it. I mean, that's crazy just to dish it out. So, I'll hand it on now.
Thanks, Carol. Yeah, pretty interesting, isn't it? The ICAC have done a review and an audit of political parties and donators recently, and they've put forward 17 recommendations for change in the legislation. So I definitely will support that wholeheartedly. The great thing about an independent is I haven't done a deal with any of the major parties. Like I said, I believe all the major parties need to go back and do a bit of homework and get back to who their grassroots are and get back to their people. Until you actually can take yourself off the tit, you will not be going anywhere. That includes LNP as well. So I think 4 years in the wilderness is probably long enough to get those guys to wake up to themselves. But having somebody like me who is there for the community and nobody else, I carry forward your dreams and your integrity and your values.
In removing this industry from any part of Australia, we have to be respectful of the, however unfortunate and uncomfortable legal ramifications of doing so. Now, I want to make sure we can get out of this as cheaply as possible. If we can get out of it for $0, I'm absolutely in favour of that. I don't want to spend any more money on this than we absolutely have to. But unfortunately, compensation is one of the measures that we may have to use, and I would rather say we will use it if we absolutely have to. I don't know if the amount of money that was brought back in the day was appropriate. I'm not sure. Today's government thought so, and again, if their representative was here, we might have been able to ask him that question. Again, he's not here. But I can only say, look, I want to make sure that if there's compensation that has to be paid out, it's as minimal as possible. If we can get it done for nothing, let's do it for nothing. But the commitment there is that we have to look at all possible measures. Now, to your point about the Santos donation, I wasn't aware that they were donating. They didn't donate to my campaign personally. My campaign was garnered through support from people I know and quite honest measures, and the disclosures are all publicly available. But look, they don't influence me. I haven't found anybody that I've come across in the party that's influenced by mining companies in any undue way as they would anybody else in the community or any other industry. I share your concerns, but I'm not aware of the donation. I can't comment more than that.
Can I just add to that, now that we've seen the return of the Labor government in Queensland, it's the Abbott Point coal port expansion's been approved and it's all systems go again.
That's probably a question I'd leave for the Queensland Labor government.
I was shocked, like everyone else was, when funding for Links for Learning was abolished for the Clarence this year. I was surprised it actually wasn't as a standard recurrent funding that was made available to socially disadvantaged areas, and that it actually relied on our community to make a pitch that was successful. And I think that is inherently wrong, because that actually further disadvantages the communities that it actually is meant to help. So how would I address this? We need increased funding, we need recurrent funding, ongoing funding for vital services. The housing issue is a real problem. The Greens have announced a $4.5 billion investment in social housing, and that would help in part to address those shortages in the Clarence.
Again, youth's on my heart. I really, 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 really want to see funding as Janet has said. Now, the problem is that we don't seem to have the funding that we can get. It just doesn't seem to be there. I'm very strong about this, and I believe we need to see more released to the regional areas, and that, as in funding, extremely well done for youth, because youth is a critical area at the moment. I think if we don't do this, we're going to pay within the next 10 to 20 years big time. And our problems will be not this size, but this size. If we don't deal with it now, we're going to have big problems later. And I will move mountains to get funding for youth, and that's how it is. And links to learning, that style of thing, right across your board to you, the disability area.
Yeah, we'll go along the line.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm going to take a different tack to that. I have 3 young people, and like I said before, I have been heavily involved in the community for 30 years, and I've always taken an innovative approach, and I have never actually had to rely on too many government grants to actually action things in the community. So for me, what our community needs is more people who'll just step up and do it, who'll roll their sleeves up, and instead of just waiting for things to happen, it's about making things happen. The most important thing so far is, it's interesting, there's no young people here tonight. Where are they? Because at the end of the day, oh, sorry, one, where are they? Okay, sorry, young at heart over there. They have to be a part of the conversation as well, because it's their future. And they actually have a lot of the answers, because they are living their world now that will take them into the future. So some of the things that I've actually done to bring that gap, narrow that gap, is that us finishing?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Or another 15 seconds
Oh,
to be
okay.
allowed in this case.
Oh, okay. But anyway, I have done youth-related activities throughout the Valley for Youth Week, and I have done activities with the Indigenous community as well, and through Rugby League. So it's about innovation and bringing everybody together to solve our local problems.
Thank you.
Programs like Links to Learning, Midnight Basketball, in my view, far safer if you've got a local member in the community that's actually fighting for those programs to stay there. And as much as you need, as much as it is unfair to have community-based organisations that run these programs have to continually apply for their right to continue to do the good work that they do and have done for over 20 years in the case of the New School of Arts in South Grafton with Links to Learning. As unfair as that is, it's also incredibly useful if you've got a local member that actually helps that process. Now, it's no secret that Links to Learning has been incredibly important for 20 years. It should have stayed. I can't, I know I mentioned it before, but I can't help but think that if we had a local member there that was actually involved in the approval process, and ultimately it's his government, it's his minister that tells people, that administers the money and tells people where it needs to go, I can't help but think that if there was a strong person there with a strong piece of representation, that might have happened. I'm committed to making sure that that's happened. It's an awful situation, Peter, it needs to stop. That kind of situation, in my view, is created through largely the current government's will to have large, often for-profit providers now providing some of these community-based programs. The particular piece of evidence you offered then in regard to the person offering advice but offering inappropriate advice, that doesn't happen if you have governments that provide funding to locally run, community-run operators that know the local area and that know how assistance should be administered in a local community. Now, we've had the current government move away from that model. They want to deal with less providers, they want to deal with larger providers, but it's easier to have 10 contracts rather than 10 large contracts rather than 60 individual targeted contracts. Despite the fact that the individual targeted contracts actually create a better outcome in the community, they want to go the easy option. I want to bring it back to the option that actually works for people. We have to start funding community organisations and local organisations to provide those kind of services, and that's what I'll be pushing for.
If you think your problem's bad now, you wait. Last week, all the landlords in Yamba received a letter from the real estate agents telling them not to renew anybody's leases. I am one of those people. They have colluded and they are now saying that we can get so much more money for your place. So, in my view, we are now reaching a state of emergency because we cannot house our people and those other people who are about to be made homeless. This is on the back of the upgrade of the Pacific Highway and the building of the Grafton Bridge, where there is expected to be between 1,500 and 2,000 workers coming into the valley. This is the downside, the social downside of doing business in New South Wales with the coalition government. I have heard Chris Galaptis and Richie Williamson bragging about this bridge and this highway being upgraded, and it's still sitting in Treasury. It's not been approved or allocated yet. However, I have heard nothing about the social ramifications. So, in my mind, if I'm elected, I'm calling a state of emergency.
Thank you. Karen.
I agree, housing's got worse and worse and worse and worse. There's no two ways about it. I'm in the process myself of helping a family and seeing what we can do in regard to the house they're living in, because we simply couldn't find one. And that, I believe, is a priority. That's how much of a priority. I've been working on it today as well as everything else. So, it's very important to see our children, our families looked after, and whatever it takes, it's all about community, families. If we can't look after families and children, even single people, we all need accommodation. We've got to do something better, and it's true. We're going to be inundated, and of course things are happening now, and they're saying as such in the real estate, yes, getting quick because it's going to get worse and worse, accommodation will be hopeless. So we don't want to see people who are having difficulties being pushed out. And I will push very much to make sure housing is a priority. It is a big priority. Families are a big priority.
Homelessness is an issue for a lot of people who are on benefits, particularly the New Start benefit, because you can't live on New Start. And one of the issues that the Greens in the federal parliament have been pushing for is increases in New Start, so it becomes a living wage. Plus, we were opposed to the move of putting single mothers onto New Start. In fact, that just made families less economically viable and punished single mothers. I was speaking to a woman the other day who had had an accident. She woke up in intensive care with docs telling her that they were taking her children from her because she neglected her children while she was in hospital in intensive care. She lost her single mother's benefit, was put onto New Start, can't find anywhere to live. She's one of the homeless people who are couch surfing. As I said, the Greens are investing will wish to invest $4.5 billion into social housing. That will improve housing affordability, but also it'll take the heat out of the market because it's going to be funded by a vendor's sales tax. It'll take some of that heat out of the housing bubble and greatly increase the stock of public housing. Thanks.
I think, Janet, you've answered that, so perhaps we can ask the others what they'll do, what their part.
CDP is very much heavily involved in looking after families. And if it takes, anything like a tax or whatever, I think we'll move mountains. I won't say exactly what would be done, but I would like to say that we'll find a way. There will be a way, and you don't give up. And that's as simple as it is. If one doesn't work, find another way. Don't hesitate and don't wait.
Whoever is elected on the 28th of, whichever government is elected on the 28th, I will give it my full commitment to solve these issues on your behalf, and it will have a priority because I already have 3 children and I have been in this situation myself. So I know how important it is not to be on the scrap heap, and I know how important it is to climb out of it. So for me personally, I would more than happy champion this cause for you.
The Labor Party's always believed in social housing and in affordable housing for people. Without having a specific commitment in front of you right now, I know that that's something I'll be pushing for, and the broader Labor Party body will be pushing for as well. We need to do a lot to fix this issue, and the Labor Party's committed to doing so.
I applaud Clarence Valley Council in their planning decisions because they actually are including affordable housing in their new subdivision approvals, and we need to work together. Local government and state government needs to work together to solve this issue.
I myself would like to see other jobs other than government, first of all, simply because governments come and go and only operate in a 4-year term. So while I applaud your idea for government jobs, it is about relocating some of those services out into... pardon? Yeah, it is about advocating and pursuing those relocation of government jobs into regional rural areas, not just here in Grafton, but in Casino as well. But if elected, I will give that my full attention. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be what is in the best interest for the valley and the electorate. So it's not a one-size-fits-all model. So yes, we can go for other government jobs and jump up and down and whatever. But it's actually doing a whole entrepreneurial approach as well, because times have changed and we need to move into the future.
Well, for a start, there's a pretty easy way to bring quite a number of high-value government jobs back to the Clarence Valley, just to reopen the Grafton jail. It's pretty disappointing when the people of Bathurst get Kirk Connell Jail back, when we know that Grafton Jail could have been a far more efficient facility and much better for the corrective service system. But as we know, the person who was involved in the decision is not here, so they can't answer for it. Government jobs are obviously part of the mix. We need to ensure that, particularly in the area of health, I think we need to ensure we have enough nurses in our hospitals to do the job. Labor's nurse to ratio plan to have 3 patients to 1 nurse in emergency departments and paediatric wards in New South Wales hospitals will help boost the amount of government jobs, particularly within the health sector. As far as the point about relocating government department jobs to regional areas, that's an area that's got to be done properly. There's certainly a lot of evidence to suggest that if you just pick up a government department or a division of it and plonk it in a regional town, that produces a level of inefficiency for the department overall. I wouldn't support a relocation program if it produced an inefficiency dividend to the department overall, but if it works, let's see if we can do it.
Well, I thank Trent for that, because CDP is wholly committed to opening the jail. Not only that, it's wholly committed to opening it as a drug-free jail. And that is something that has been a bit of a groundbreaker. I want to see that. We've got drugs here, ice, that are deadly. That's deadly stuff. And it's killing people. We've got to do something. You talk about youth. Well, there you go. We've got to do something. Now, you're talking about government jobs, and that lady who asked that question. Yes, government jobs, the jail, government jobs, bring in departments, whatever. That is, CDP is going to do that. They have made that, categorically said they will bring departments here. They will build structure here. And they are committed to the regional area in that way. And they will do that. And definitely a drug-free jail.
The Greens are also committed to moving government jobs into regional area. It's part of our Renew Regional New South Wales policy. And speaking as someone who actually is a government worker, in my normal work, if I'm unsuccessful in this job application process, I hope to go back to that government job. I can really speak from first hand just how bad the downsizing has been in Grafton. There has been a continual attrition of jobs, public sector jobs in Grafton, most notably with the jail, most recently. But you go to the government office block now, it's half empty, and that's criminal. So government jobs is actually one of the few areas where the New South Wales government can directly influence job creation. Government sector jobs, they tend to be higher paid, they tend to be more stable, and so it leads to greater outcomes for the whole community. So yes, please, keep my job in Grafton, please. I would work. Keeping current government jobs, getting new government jobs in this area, definitely it's a priority for me. Thanks. I don't think I've got anything further to add.
That's a little bit true, I think. Yes, keeping government jobs is what we've stated probably before. However, I think I would like to see more done in youth services, in the areas of suicide, in the areas of mental health in that area, because it's so high and badly needed here. We've got a very high rate in our mental health, of people who are suffering, especially in that area, and farmers with suicide. I would say that would open up quite an area of government jobs as well, and also in the hospitals associated with that, because you would have, your affiliated services with the hospitals regarding your mental health. And I think that's a great priority. I really do. Important.
Very few times in history has the Clarence Valley had the opportunity to stand up and be counted. That actually comes about when we have strong leadership. And 2.5 years ago, we had that opportunity, but our leaders didn't stand up and they didn't take anybody forward. Until the Clarence electorate draws its line in the sand and stops being a doormat, you will not be listened to and you will be continued to be ignored. We will not be heard, even our MP's not heard for that matter, because hey, Brad Hazard's been here twice, so we've been kicked in the guts twice now about the jail. But until you all stand up and become a hero, and that takes a lot of courage, you need to do that so that we send a clear message to Sydney and Canberra that you've got to take us seriously.
Government jobs in the Clarence Valley should be protected because they play an incredibly important role not only in the provision of government service but also in our economy. So I completely accept the questioner's premise there about the value of those jobs to the economy. So look, I'm committed to keeping it at that level. I know the party is as well, and I'll certainly advocate within the group for that outcome locally as well. What I'd also note about increasing government jobs is that I'm not against that, provided we can find the revenue solution that actually funds those jobs. The last thing I want to do is start pulling money out of other important sections of the budget, say infrastructure, or there's innumerable areas of funding. If we can find revenue solutions that add to revenue, that let us go and fund those jobs, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Janet wants to say one more thing quickly.
One of the common issues that people have talked to me about is the lack of services in the Clarence Valley. We're in a gap, huge gap between the Coffs and Lismore. You have to go south to Coffs or north to Lismore to go to see so many specialists, to receive mental health services, education, other health services. We need to actually get some of those services here. Most of them are government services. That would increase the number of government jobs in this area.
Thank you.
The very important word you brought up then, Tony, was balance. I'll agree that the koala policy is quite a broad policy, quite a large policy, the Koala National Park policy, but let me say first of all that I'm committed to it and the Labor Party's committed to it because we believe it's important to protect this species, not just for ourselves but for future generations. But at the same time, I fielded a lot of inquiry, and very genuine inquiry, from the timber industry about concerns about the jobs, the forestry compartments that are currently contained within the proposed area for the park. And I'll give the audience tonight the same undertaking I'm giving the timber industry. As much as it's important to protect the species, for everyone, it's incredibly important from a very local and Clarence Valley level that we protect those timber industry jobs. Now, the Labor Party and the timber industry have been able to negotiate in the past, to negotiate some sort of working transaction between the timber industry and the environment. My commitment is to ensure that we can do it again. That's the undertaking I've given the timber industry, and I'm committed to doing that because I know how important jobs are in the Clarence Valley. I don't want to see them disappear area. I'm committed to making sure they stay.
I'm a Liberal. I definitely like balance. So what I would like to bring to this conversation and give my commitment to is that when this comes onto the table for a conversation, that we have all stakeholders there for that conversation. And I am told that not everybody was there for that conversation. What I would also like to do, what I would also do is equal weight social, economic and environmental outcomes. To me, that is all so important so that there is a win-win situation. And unless we actually have everybody there who can be a part of that process and that conversation, too many people get too hurt, the environment can be too hurt as well.
Again, I think the words come up again and again, and it will again. Balance. And I think we've got to remember that there is so many things in our community that we have to look at. It's not one thing or another thing. There is a balance and it has to be there. And the environment, and I love the koalas too. So, I mean, you know, there's a balance because we need the jobs too. So you've got to look at it and look at it constructively and see what really can be done. Not a decision you just make lightly. I don't think any decision like that should be made lightly. And I think we should really think about what we're doing. But certainly balance, I have to agree.
So I'm going to have a different word. I'm not going to use the word balance. I'm going to use the word true investment of public money. No, that's not the one word, is it? Oh, well, anyway, sorry, I haven't prepared for this question because it wasn't actually one that we were emailed today. But The Greens have announced a phase out of timber harvesting on public lands. And I stress this is only on public lands, not private lands. And in this area, there is actually just as much private forest as public forest that is currently available for timber harvesting. But it tends to be better managed. That's a major issue. And it tends to be managed for the benefit of the landholder. At the moment, public forestry is costing us money in native forests. It's a major drain on the government resources. Tony talks about public servants being a leech on taxpayers. Well, so has been our public native forestry. And I prefer to subsidise jobs in something that wasn't destroying our forests and reducing the environmental services that they provide, such as clean water for our catchments. Thank you.
As it's a huge issue, and there is so much said about whether we should sell or whether we shouldn't, is it going to benefit, is it going to cost more with electricity, what will happen, we've sold our assets, we've got nothing after 12 months, it's all gone. There is such a to-do about it. It's dividing the community. It's absolutely dividing the whole of New South Wales, I believe. We've got to do something. So what Reverend Fred has said is he wants to do that inquiry into it and really make sure that we're not going to just find ourselves left out on a limb, that the regional areas don't quite get what they should get. When all's said and done, it doesn't happen. We don't need that to happen. We need to make sure that there's going to be money come. What is promised does come. It needs to happen. And if it doesn't, well, that's what we need to find out. We want to make sure.
Thank you, Janet.
The Greens have been opposed to privatisation under the current government. We've also been opposed to it when Labor tried it in the previous decade. We're consistent on that. Privatisation of, thank you, privatisation on public assets, it only works because a private company that wants to buy that asset is going to cut the services or increase the amount of money that they charge you for the service that they're providing. It doesn't make sense otherwise. And that, in effect, becomes a regressive tax on future consumers. It needs to be stopped. The Greens have identified that we don't need to sell our assets to have $20 billion worth of investment in infrastructure. A low interest loan that the government can get that would be paid off over 20 years is a much more sensible solution to that problem, and we can actually end up with both our assets and these new infrastructure assets at the end of the 20-year period.
As an independent, I oppose the selling off of public assets as well, and like the wise words of this gentleman here, he's got 60 years experience in, sharing this knowledge, and thank you so much, because at the end of the day, it doesn't work. And I love the idea of our public assets paid by the taxpayer actually making money for us, not for other companies or private companies. So if I'm elected, I'm your girl, I'll watch your back.
I'm opposed to privatisation, I'm opposed to selling off assets. The New South Wales Labor Party is opposed to privatisation, and we are opposed to selling off public assets. It doesn't work. There's numerous examples from both sides of Parliament, as Janet quite rightly pointed out. So look, we're opposed to that, and it's not going to happen. I'll just make a quick point about budgetary processes and the way in which budgets are communicated. I think successive governments have made very poor attempts at explaining how the budget works, and particularly coming back to that simple concept that you mentioned about income and expense, which is really all it is. Now, I think people understand that governments collect revenue in a variety of different ways at a variety of different times. I'm not saying it's not complex, but what I would like to see is a government, and probably the local members again, can take a step up and actually explain this back to their people. Let's see some governments that actually try and explain what the different funding regimes are and how they're funded. And you'll actually find that if you look at some of the recent history in the Clarence electorate, there's been a few budgetary tricks where a few promises have been hidden, particularly going over that large body of water over there, that haven't been accounted for. And I think a better explanation of budgetary process would have solved that problem.
Fortunately, we were all invited the other day to go to Yamba Preschool to have a conversation with the early educators there, and it was great. So we've been given a whole lot of advice on where to go from that. So me personally, as an independent, of course I support that. And of course I support early intervention as well, because so many children slip through the cracks, and if it's picked up early enough in preschool, it will save a lifelong journey of heartache and heartbreak. So definitely that would be something that I would hugely support and see, you know, as being significant. In terms of Aboriginal children, I myself, I'm one of those really fortunate people. I get to see a lot of positive Aboriginal things with the Aboriginal community, and I see that by inclusion, running events, education with parents, all those kids go to school anyway, so I'm not really sure why you're even making the divide there, because they're already there, so why divide them? They're there, learning already.
I also attended the same function that Debrah was at, and attended a similar function at Bentley Preschool, which is in the north of the electorate. Quite frankly, the amount of funding that New South Wales children receive for early education is disgraceful. And if you look at the amount of funding received in other states on the eastern seaboard, they all outspend us. If you look at funding in South Australia and West Australia, they significantly outspend us. I'm committed to making sure that we can increase that. I know the Labor Party is as well, and hopefully we'll have some more details on that very soon. But I think when it comes to funding, and particularly in regional New South Wales for preschools, what you'll find is that because our regional electorates are made up of not one place but many, many small places, and often these places have their own community-run preschool, we particularly need to ensure that those facilities are funded adequately, and as adequately as facilities in regional centres. That's incredibly important, not just for children broadly in those small communities, but particularly for Indigenous children. Indigenous children will largely live in many of those communities, and it's incredibly important that we fund community preschools to ensure a benefit for all children in the early childcare sector.
The Greens are fully in support of the Biggest Slice for Early Education in New South Wales campaign. I was up at Bentley with Trent the other day, and it is a surprise to learn that New South Wales has the lowest funding of preschool sector and the lowest proportion of kids in preschool. The chronic underfunding, which happened under Labor as well as under the current Liberal National Government, must be reversed. The Greens have a comprehensive policy regarding early childhood education. The main aim is to give all children access to universal free public school preschool education for 2 years. That's 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. At the moment, 4-year-olds are subsidised. Kids who are only 3-year-old don't get subsidised in terms of attending preschool. In terms of Aboriginal communities, that definitely needs specific work, and we would establish and fund early childhood education and care programs in schools with significant Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander student populations. One of the benefits of preschool is the outreach services such as speech pathology. That's why it's important. Those services aren't provided usually in childcare facilities. We need preschool. It's part of the education, it's a responsibility of the community as well as government. Thank you.
It was a great day down at the preschool, as Debrah said, and we learned a little bit more than we knew before, and that was wonderful. However, it's a bit of a shame. We saw that a lot of the people were not really getting the funding that they needed with the children at 3 years of age, as Janet has said. So we need to look at that. CDP is committed to giving a voucher to every child, an adequate voucher that will be there for them, and that will be as like cash in hand, and that is their commitment. And preschool, yes, we will see preschool addressed and brought up to speed where the other states have run all over us. We want that to happen as well. As far as the Indigenous children go and their needs, I have to say they do have things that they need more in some ways. And I really think we need to address this and given them the respect due so that they can actually learn what they need to learn. And that is culture and different things of that nature.
Okay, so it's my understanding 8 of the world banks are already pulling their funding from coal mining companies. And I think with New South Wales, even though I don't have a direct plan, what I like to think that we can do, even here in the Clarence Valley, is mimic what's just happened in Byron Bay and has become an emissions-free locality. And that, once again, boils down to leadership and the will of the people to move forward for the next generation. What is our legacy? Around the world, in particular the USA, Germany and China, they are now leading the way in renewable energy. We once were there, but we need to actually take that back. So we as a community, as an electorate, need to step up and demand that so much more from the people who are elected or the parties that are elected on the 28th. If I'm elected, that is something that I will definitely lobby for, and making sure that we have a brighter future for our young people.
Unfortunately, it is a sad reality that in many ways Australia has allowed itself to be left behind in the renewable energy story globally. We've already had a lot of talent leave, Australian talent leave to go and work in other renewable energy markets in America and in Europe. It's disappointing, and it's been allowed to happen by a lot of levels of governments and possibly, unfortunately, by both parties, by all parties. Look, I support the industry as a young politician. I'd love to be able to say that at some point in my career I could be there when we're not talking about the lack of renewable energy, we're talking about what to do with it and how to develop it further. I'd like to be part of that conversation. I'll certainly advocate for that within the Labor Party and within the government, be it in government or opposition. I know how important it is, and I think if we do look to examples as they exist in Europe in particular, I think California is an excellent example. There's some really, I think, for me, there's some great models there as far as renewable energy. We need to look at those markets and see what they're doing and actually start bringing this industry to Australia again.
As I said in my opening speech, the Greens have a plan to transition New South Wales to 100% renewables. We recognise that most of our coal needs to stay in the ground. Burning fossil fuels is environmentally destructive, it's causing climate change. Newcastle is the largest coal export port in the world. We need to stop feeding that to the planet. So, the Greens policy, we'd like to phase out coal exports by 2020. We would close all coal-fired power stations by 2030. And we would support, federally, we're supporting the retention of the 41,000 gigawatt hour renewable energy target. But we've got a plan B. We're going to institute a New South Wales renewable energy target if it is cut at the federal level.
I think it's a must that we look at other options with fuel and energy, because life and the world changes, and it does. It's obvious. And we need to think a little bit more of how we can put our inventive thinking to work and come up with new ideas. And I think if you think just coal, you get stuck in that thinking. And we must start thinking outside the box in different areas of energy. I think that's important. I think we mostly understand that anyway, and I agree with it. I think we need to look at different ways of having energy. I think there's a lot more to it than we've actually found as yet. It's a hot issue at the moment, and should be too. Well, food that has been contaminated. Australia's got a great supply. We've got the good supply. Why do we need to really have a lot of imports, and tinned imports at that, or frozen imports? We don't need that sort of thing to that degree. I don't see it. And I think we should actually promote our farms, our fishermen, our farmers, what they're doing. Our farms are shutting down and it's not looking very good. We need to keep that promoted. Our farmers, make sure that we can support them and get the Australian food out there to our people and not have imported foods, to my way of thinking. I think it's very important for our economy as well.
Great question. I don't need to be elected to actually... So that was quick.
Sorry.
I don't need to be elected to already action something about food. I'm one of 3 people who are the coordinators of a new food event in the Clarence Valley called Feast in the Field, which is on the 19th of April. And this event has 2 sections, the feast in the afternoon, but it's the industry morning. We're bringing all stakeholders together throughout the Clarence River and Northern Rivers region for pretty much like a little mini conference. And those stakeholders include the chefs, the producers, the growers, the movers and the shakers and the wannabes who want to grow food and who want to sell. So this is the first time this is communities actually having that conversation about native, organic and local food. The United Nations recently released a report that said for food to be sustainable, communities need to take responsibility and diversity in growing their food. We're already starting that on the 19th of April, and we still have all the feast tickets have sold, but there's a couple of industry ones still available if you'd like to come.
This is largely an issue that probably should be dealt with, at least in my point of view, by the Shadow Minister for Trade and Investment, federally. I won't speak above my station and speak on behalf of that person because that would be incredibly rude as a aspiring young political candidate. But look, I'll say this: the issue we're in now with that particular issue is that Australia is now on the wrong side of the economic scales as far as what we're paying for food coming in. We've now reached a point where imported food, in some instances, is cheaper to buy, and in some cases cheaper to produce. That requires a fairly coordinated economic response. We can't go back to the days of protectionism because Australia is now a global market and we accept that global markets is something we want to be a part of. But we certainly need some better economic solutions, and some of them are going to be quite complex, to ensure that what we're eating is safe. I've got no issues with food imports, provided it's safe, and I'm sure the gentleman probably shares that view, but we need to ensure that the economic drivers that control the price are correct for our market as well as the people we're purchasing from.
Last year there was a great documentary series on SBS called What's the Catch, which really exposed how bad the fisheries were overseas and how they were destroying their marine environments. I'd like to point out that marine and estuarine sanctuaries, which are excluded from fisheries, are actually helpful to maintaining the viability of those fisheries, because these are the nurseries in which our fish and our prawn are actually born and raised and get to a size where we can actually get a decent catch. When it comes to veggies and fruit, like berries, particularly at the moment, it is in part a federal issue to ensure that there's adequate quality and that it doesn't poison us or give us hepatitis A. I mean, that's disgusting. What we can do at a state level is protect our farmland from coal mining and from gas exploitation so that we can actually grow the food. We're losing viable, productive and valuable farmland to coal mines, and that's a crime. I have to admit that the new Greens forestry policy, its release, could have been better timed for my purposes. It certainly isn't a vote winner in the Clarence, and I acknowledge that. But I also acknowledge that we've got to do something about the management of our public forests. In terms of what we do with your displaced timber workers, we would look after them. It's compensation packages, retraining, getting new jobs in terms of the tourism industry and maximising the amount of revenue that can come from that. We'd also look at improving management and establishment of our plantation stock and ensuring that any profits that come from the plantations division of Forestry Corporation actually get invested into establishing multi-species timber plantations rather than just being hived off into consolidated revenue. So.
As I mentioned previously, I don't want to see the jobs disappear either. I'm as concerned as you are. I gave you and other members of the timber industry the undertaking that I would get in there and fight for you. That's my challenge. That is my commitment to you. I'm committed to upholding that. I don't want to see Notaris as a piece of history in the Clarence Valley. I want to see it happening now, and I want to see the other industries here as well. I'm committed to making sure that we can find a way to make the policy that I'm quite proud of and your industry work together. I told you I'd do it. I told you that I would make sure that would happen, and I'm still committed to doing it, Spiro. I'm still committed to it. No one's lost their jobs yet. Let's work together and make sure we can find a proper outcome for it. That's what good government's about, and that's what I'm committed to doing.
I've had a few conversations with Spiro about this now. From where I sit, I see the timber industry, the fishing industry is also looking like it's going to collapse in a few years' time as well. So it's just the tip of the iceberg. And that's just not here in the Clarence Valley or the Clarence electorate, that's in Australia. Unless we have a conversation, like I said before, with all the stakeholders, and in particular people like Spiro, who have 60 years experience, who is not a radical, he's not, he's a good man, and he has this industry knowledge and this industry experience. Why wouldn't you bring him to the table to have a conversation for his employees, for their best outcomes, and for the environment, and for the social as well? So my understanding is Mr. Foley didn't bring Spiro to the table. I would like to see, if I actually get elected, and whoever wins government, that is what I will be calling for. These people who have the traditional industries in our regional areas brought to the table for that full conversation.
I think we have to be careful that we don't just cut some industry off very quickly and say, oh, well, we'll work something out. I think we've got to balance again. I just sense that one has to be very careful with what one does with such industries, and you need to keep industries going as such with the timber industry. I really believe we do need that. I believe it's something that we do need to see stay, and nobody knows the future really. But I think, yes, bring stakeholders together, talk about it, and find out if there is a solution again. I don't think we should make snap decisions on it, and I think that we should do more about talking together and finding out what's going on and making sure we don't make a big mistake here. I think timber has been an incredible asset to this valley.
Without notice.
The community is everyone in this area. It's people like yourselves who bother coming out on a night to talk to us so we can hear your concerns. It's our local government, the elected representatives there. It's our schools, the children in the schools, but also the parents and the teachers. It's everyone. And in terms of aged care, it's the residents and it's the service providers for those. How do we organise it? Word of mouth is the best start. Getting some movers and shakers out there in the community to talk to each other. But actually just to recognise and provide opportunities for you guys to talk to us so we know what your issues are and we can represent your interests in Parliament.
Yes, community is all of us, no exceptions. Everyone who lives here, whether you be somebody who's just a resident for a time or you're permanent, we're all community. So we need to work together, and yes, it is a matter of bridging those gaps too. As you know, not everybody, there's refugees, not everybody's a resident. So we are all community, all what Janet said, and more. And we need to work with those people, different languages, different cultures, different peoples and ideas, all community. And we need to look at that and respect each one for who they are and what they say and do, and the way they do things. We're all different. I think greater respect for one another is very important, and that brings community together, to just respect and look after one another. There's a lot of, we do tend to inward look a bit as Australians, and we need to look a little bit outward.
Community. In my mind, community is family, because my family, my fringe family actually live in Sydney. So when I'm out there in the workforce and I'm out there doing projects with our community, I see my community as a part of an extended family. When as an event organiser, and I take that upon myself because I'm so in love with our community and so passionate about our community, I step up, and I don't need to wait to anybody to tell me that I can and cannot do it. I just go and do it. But when I do it, I involve all of the Clarence Valley, not just Lower River, because we are everybody, we're a whole piece of the pie. A lot of people who event organise around here don't include everybody, don't include all ages. I purposely go out of my way, even in my own job, to make sure that when I take a photograph, I include all demographics in that photograph, whoever is in that room or wherever. That is my personal action. In regards to children working, I have 3 children. Not one of my children have ever been out of a job here in the Clarence. They have been all working since the age of 14. And as a parent, I see it my responsibility to educate them into the workforce. So I think a lot of people don't take that responsibility seriously. Sorry.
Look, I think the previous 3 answers have been pretty comprehensive of what community means. I think we've all got our own sense of what that means. It's the people you see every day, it's the people who live down the street, it's the people who live on the other side of town that you never see, it's the organisations that exist in town, it's the businesses that work, it's everyone. It's an all-encompassing concept. Does it need to be defined or redefined? Look, I think most people's idea of community is usually pretty good, but look, if there's scope to add extra elements in there, let's have that discussion and see what we can do.